do that then. It's 6 minutes past. So let's kick off. So we've been through apologies for absence. Minutes of the previous meeting is agenda item number 2. And we've received that. I couldn't see that there are any particular actions on there that won't be covered off in the updates we're going to get today. So are we happy that we can accept the minutes as a true and accurate record of the last meeting?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is declaration of interests. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interest in respect of any matters to be considered at this meeting? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, so item number 4, I think is going to be Joe's, which is the quarterly performance report.
That's right. So if you can bear with me a moment while I just try and get my screen sharing sorted, because as well as the report that's in with the papers, Kingsley, although he's away, has prepared some slides which I will share with you.
Okay.
If I can press all the right buttons. Here we are. Okay, hopefully you can see that on your screen. Excellent. Sorry, I'm just going to reorganize as well so I can check for any questions along the way too. Okay, so yes, Kingsley's prepared these slides which look at the sort of tonnage and collection service performance over the recent period, but also the contract performance at the end as well. And so let's pop through these, and I'll do my best to talk you through all of them. So this first one covers the tonnages for raw materials on a rolling 12-month basis. So as this is up to December, we're effectively looking at sort of the calendar years really for this period, January to December, up to 24 in the same period the previous year. If we start by looking at all material, you can see that all of Surrey and the non-joint contract authorities, so the other districts and boroughs, are relatively stable, and that's the same for Surrey Heath and Moldboley, who are relatively in line with that. It's Woking and Elmbridge that sit a little bit outside of the trends there. Looking at the breakdown, the percentage decreases are quite significant on some areas such as garden waste, but if we look down the Surrey column to start with, materials across all areas are broadly stable. Kingsley would normally say that if it was 1% one way or the other, then they would consider that stable. So for those top 3, the all material, DMR and food, they're all relatively stable, but it's the garden and the residual that we're seeing a decrease and an increase in respectively. So then looking at each of the boroughs in comparison to that, Elmbridge is actually seeing an overall decrease in material. Residual's got a very minimal change, so that's a positive in light of a sort of overall decrease in tonnages generally, that residual is pretty stable, and food is increasing, which again is a positive. Moore Valley is also relatively stable as an overall sort of tonnage figure. It's a bit of an outlier when it comes to garden waste, which has seen an increase, which is different to the other areas. Surrey Heath overall is relatively stable, but we are seeing an increase in residual waste there, which isn't necessarily in line with everybody else, and we've got a decrease in food, which again is something we'd want to be keeping an eye on going forward. In Woking as well, we have an overall decrease in tonnages. It's actually got the largest negative change in food waste, which again, these are areas that make us want to sort of keep an eye on what happens over the coming months, because we need to understand whether these are trends within a quarter, within a particular period, or longer term. And garden waste there has also been going down too. When it comes to recycling rates, the top table is just comparing that on a quarterly basis, so quarter 3 of the current year versus quarter 3 of the previous year, and the second table for the 12-month period ending in December each year. In both of these, in Surrey, we're seeing a sort of more stable picture than we are in the 4 joint contact authorities. But again, the fluctuations do seem to come from different root causes. As we've seen in that previous one, there are different impacts affecting different materials in different areas, which means there's more work for us to do to understand why those different drivers are impacting differently in each of the areas. But overall, we are unfortunately seeing a decrease in recycling rates generally. We'll go into looking at slides which look at specific tonnages. So for the next one, we've got the DMR tonnages. So this is for the Q3 of the current year versus Q3 of the previous year, and that's the same across the next few slides. It's always that same comparison. So in slide 1, we saw that generally the trend is for a decrease in DMR tonnages, and that's reflected in this table here, the exception being Mole Valley, which has seen a small uptick in tonnage for Q3 year on year. For food waste, again, over the 12 months, we saw that Elmbridge and Mole Valley were seeing an increase year on year, but in Q3 it was actually lower. So that was a little bit of a sort of outlier of the trend compared to the full year trend, compared to the same period the previous year. For Surrey Heath and Woking, who over 12 months to December have seen an overall decrease of 1.1%, 1.7% respectively, they didn't have that same level of change in Q3. And in fact, in Q3, Woking saw higher food waste tonnages in the same period the previous year. In garden waste, these are all lower to some extent. We know garden waste can be a very seasonally affected one, not just because we see peaks in summer versus the rest of the year, but also because we know the weather impacts. Do we have a dry summer? Do we have a very wet winter? Those can all impact too. But as you can see here, each area had a small decrease in tonnage compared to the same period the previous year. And in residual waste, all areas had an increase in tonnage. That is in line with the year-on-year changes we were seeing in that first slide, which looked at the 12-month rolling tonnages. The next few slides show us the long-term trends. This is just helpful to see, the bigger picture compared to these more snapshot figures quarter on quarter. So the first one is the dry mix recycling tonnage. This is covering sort of nearly 5 years now. And again, we can see that within each year we get lots of peaks and troughs, but overall the trend line is following the same pattern as the Surrey-wide average, which is the chart on the left. These are very similar across all materials, to be honest. Again, with food waste, we see those peaks and troughs month on month, but overall the trend is the same across the 4 contract areas and similarly across the Surrey Environment Partnership. For garden waste, those month-on-month lines are a lot more reactive to the conditions and the seasons. You can see in some years that the autumn peak maybe looks a little bit different to others, and we get a couple of spikes rather than a more gradual decline. But again, trend lines very similar, small declines over the period, but lots of fluctuations within the years. And on residual waste, it's broadly very stable over the years, slight declines in all areas, in line with the Surrey average too. Coming on to the contract performance, first of all, starting with Elmbridge. In each of these, we look at the 5 KPIs that are linked to miscollections. I think in Elmbridge, for the 3 months we up to December, there were improvements in most KPIs from that depot, and in December they were within target on KPI 1. There was an increase in the assisted collections that were missed in December, but in other KPIs we were generally seeing improvements. In Mole Valley, December performance was significantly improved upon the previous months. We know there's been a lot of discussion we've had around the performance issues and the service delivery issues and bound completion there, and the effect of the changes that were brought in and the stability that was achieved in the run up to Christmas are reflected in the performance figures. Sorry, lost my button. In Surrey Heath, it's a well-performing depot. KPI 1 was within target throughout the period, and although missed assisted collections are still at a level that we continue to have conversations with Amy about, we know that that's an area that we want to see improvement on. All other KPIs were very low. And finally, in Woking, again, KPI 1 in target throughout that quarter. Missed collections for assisted properties, again, one that does spark a conversation in our monthly contract meetings, because we want that to be as low as possible. And then we did see a slightly higher rate of KPI 3 than we might have expected, with very low missed collections overall. But generally, yes, 4 and 5 very low and good performance there. That's all the slides. I'm happy to keep sharing if there's anything you want me to go back to, but otherwise I'll also take questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Jo.
Take them off
Just
for now.
one question from me, if I may. In the report, it's we've all got this comment that fly tipping volumes have increased because Suez has recategorised materials to show a more accurate breakdown of tonnage. Firstly, I'm not too sure why it's Suez have done that work. I thought fly tipping was collected by Amy. And so can you just elaborate upon what's happened there?
Yeah, so what has happened is it's Suez that run the transfer stations and the tip sites where the collectors will be, whoever's collecting that material. So Amy in Three Boroughs and Woking Street Cleaning Provider in their area. They'll be delivering it in, and it's about how they're classifying different materials and recording it in more detail in some cases at the weighbridge than they might have done in the past. I think there's work that's gone on to make sure that the different types of material that might be included within a fly tip are recorded as those specific materials rather than a fly tipping category more generally. And I think that's what's driving the data to be slightly different to how we've seen it presented in the past.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Morgan.
Thank you, Councillor Tilling. Just, it's more of a general question. It's just the average trend that we're seeing in terms of kind of reduction in tonnage. What do we? Because obviously a reduction in tonnage in residual is good, but a reduction in tonnage in DMR seems to be counterproductive if they're both reducing. I'm just wondering if we can. How do we explain that? I mean, is it just people are using less?
I think there's a number of reasons, and I will welcome any of my colleagues that want to chip in with any other advice as well, because I'm not Kingsley. I think, we are seeing that reflected not just locally in the joint contract areas, not just in Surrey, but also sort of more nationally as well. I don't think we would see other tonnages coming down as necessarily a negative. It means that people are reducing waste. It's where we see other, the residual tonnage going up alongside that we would have concerns that things are, materials still being generated but not going into the right waste stream. So where you've got everything sort of generally on that trend, that's probably less of a concern but what we do want to do is obviously make sure that the percentages are going in the right direction. At the moment, that would be an area of concern that the recycling rates aren't increasing. I know they are fluctuating and often in a downward way.
Okay, thanks. And Rosemary?
Thank you. My question is similar, really. I was looking at the recycling rate compared with all Surrey, which is down. So are some other areas doing something that we're not doing that's improving that rate, or is it just attributable to less material, people using less material, less packaging? I don't know if it's possible to answer that. And given that residual waste is up compared with last year, it is a worry to see those two bits of data in combination.
Thanks. So we've done some work to look at where some of the differences are coming from, because, for example, in Mole Valley, there was a different trend on garden waste to some of the other areas. So we have started looking into that area in particular some more. In terms of the other Surrey authorities, that isn't something I've had any involvement in, and if Kingsley were here, he might be able to answer some questions on if there are anything different. In terms of services, I don't think there's been anything specifically different to normal, or there's been any significant changes in how those services are being delivered, so that wouldn't be impacting it. But what we've been trying to do is pinpoint, is there a particular period in that 12 months that's driving that change, and if so, then that kind of can help us dive into it a little bit more. Was there something operational, service driven that was impacting it, or can we look at other factors that we'd have to consider outside of that? So I don't have all the answers, unfortunately, at the moment, but we do want to try and understand more about what's driving that, and also why I don't believe, for example, that Mole Valley have a particular microclimate that meant their garden waste generation was significantly different to people over the boundary in Elmbridge, for example. But it is interesting that there has been quite that different trend. Kelly, I don't know if you were going to come in response to some of the questions as well.
Yeah, so just kind of throwing in some thoughts as well. I think we've always got this kind of continuing challenge of the lightweighting of packaging, which can't always be recycled. So the refill pouches that we see for things like coffee and stuff like that, under the current scheme, obviously they can't be recycled. So we're taking good things like glass jars out of the stream because people aren't buying those as refills. They're buying the pouches thinking they're doing the right thing, but then the pouches can't always be recycled. So obviously when we move forward with things like simpler recycling and flexible plastics come into play, then we will be able to start capturing, hopefully, those materials, and sending them to some kind of recyclable market. So that there's things like that obviously is industry driven from what the packaging producers are putting on the market that is having an impact as well. But I think nationally, a lot of people are struggling with the same situation that we are. And I think, this is where we're really going to have to do kind of a fundamental change in service to, kind of drive some performance improvement. I think the other thing just to mention is it's been delayed from previous years, but it's now due in March. We're due to see the DEFRA stats being published for last year, so for 23-24. Once those stats are published, and I haven't checked in the last week or so to see that they're out, but I haven't seen any news bulletins to say that they are. But once those are published, we will of course do some analysis and scrutinising of that information to have a look at what is going on across Surrey, and also what is it that the top performers are doing, and is there anything that we can learn from what they're doing to bring to the contract. So like I say, it's a bit of a watch this space, but I would like to think when we get to our next meeting we would have that analysis done, and it may be that we can glean a bit more insight from that to share with you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Ian, I'll bring you in at this stage.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of reconfirm what Kelly said. Nationally, everyone's struggling. It is, I think, cost of living has hit people, so people are using less in terms of what they're throwing away. But packaging is a big thing at the moment. With you buy stuff from Amazon now, it doesn't come in a cardboard box; it comes in a paper bag, that sort of stuff. So the producers are being pressured to reduce theirs. So obviously the consumer is reducing what they're disposing of. So it is a concern, and it's a concern nationally. From colleagues I've spoken to in the waste industry, it's happening all over the place. So we just need to wait and see what the figures say, really.
Yeah, but I would say that the whole point of EPR is that the producers of packaging become more responsible, and they reduce the amount of packaging that they're producing. So in a way, we should see the tonnage of recycling should be dropping. I suppose the important thing is that the percentage of recyclable waste should be increasing, but certainly not the tonnage. And we're not quite heading in that direction at the moment, are we? Our percentage of recycling seems to be dropping slightly. It's from sort of 55 to 54%. So clearly we've got room for improvement in that. And right, okay, no more hands up on that particular topic. So I think that brings us on to the AMI improvement plan. So that's over to you, Ian, for agenda item 5.
Yeah, it is. So I've got the presentation, and I combined mine. So I've got how we performed, and my month is slightly different to what Joe's performed. So I'm working up till February. So I'll show you my presentation, which includes the improvements that we're trying to make as well. So I'll just share my screen and put it onto presentation mode, so it's a little bit bigger for you. Let me know if you can see that, because I now can't see you. So
yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, so this is we'll go through some bits and pieces here. So the key headlines is, and as I say, up to the end of February, this is now. I haven't had March's figures through yet. So there were some challenges over the Christmas period, and that was due to a little bit of sickness that we had, availability of vehicles, but quite a big period of time where we had delays at some of the tip sites. So that didn't help us over the Christmas period and into early part of January. But since sort of the second week of January, it's been a much brighter picture across the whole estate. So we've put some new people into post. I'm now the account manager and have been since November. We appointed Tracy Lynch into the position of principal ops manager, which was my old role, and she commenced that officially on the 1st of February this year. Our route optimization project, which we were hoping would be in place by now, but that's been delayed due to sickness and absence. We've got a new team in place now, and that's working on that with some pace, and we should hopefully have some good news in the next couple of weeks on getting that implemented mid this year. We've got a good recovery plan at Mole Valley, and that has improved their service very much so. I can say now that they're not the worst performing depot in the contract. They've improved right up to the end of February, and the plan on the streets that we implemented on the first Monday of March has shown vast improvements across the estate there. We now have some really good meetings with JWS, and it's all positive news that I can report moving forward. So the next slide is our health and safety stats for the quarter. It was a good quarter for us. We did have a few incidents, which were expected. The weather conditions are not as good. The light is poor during this period, so you do expect it to increase slightly, which it did show. We did have a couple of significant ones though that had to be reported further up the ladder. They weren't RIDDORs, but they were some danger. We had a guy that cut his finger, which I know most of you know about, and one of our operatives also fell out of a vehicle, lost his footing getting out of the vehicle, and bumped his head. None of them were off for any extended length of time. So, a good performing quarter for us, really, in terms of health and safety. And this quarter is looking actually a lot better. So this is the KPI stats. You'll notice there's some big peaks in January on the waste side, especially at Mole Valley, and they were significantly hit with delays at the Leatherhead tip. And we worked really hard alongside our JWS team to eliminate that and make them the best that we could out of what was some severe delays. I think the longest was nearly 3 hours at Mole Valley Leatherhead tip. As always, Surrey Heath and Woking have performed really well. A little bit of an increase in February at Woking in terms of KPIs, but all the teams are working in that really, really well. So we move on to our improvement plan and what we're planning to do this year. As I say, our health and safety stats need to improve. So I've had meetings with my senior leadership team, and each depot manager now has a project to work on. My transport managers and my health and safety advisor all have projects to increase our health and safety stats, get better reports through, and to improve our health and safety. In terms of garden waste, we've done some analysis on especially Elmbridge, because there was a trend of them not being able to complete their garden waste service on a Monday to Friday basis, and always having the need to use a Saturday as a catch-up. So we've looked at why and how we can change that. And my first point of call was, what increase have we had in Elmbridge in terms of uptake? So since the beginning of the contract, there's actually been a 40% increase in containers emptied in Elmbridge specifically, and the distribution of that, it tends to be a lot on a Friday. I think week one, from memory, there was an increase of 53% in terms of how many containers were emptied from the beginning of the contract to up to date. But the following Friday is only 4% increase. So I've asked the question of why and how can we change that? So I can't tell you how we can do that at the moment, but I've got some ideas. But I need to run that by the team first to see if it's manageable. But alongside that, we haven't increased the number of vehicles that are used on the routes. So we just need to look at whether that is a challenge for us as well in terms of garden waste. But I should have an answer for you in the next meeting we have to let you know what route we need to go down to improve that service. So it is done from a Monday to a Friday. Our white space, we're working continuously on white space. I can now confirm as of today, our street cleaning routes at Mole Valley are ready to go onto white space. So that's improvement. So I think we're going to head to do that from Monday next week. So that'll be one project that we've completed, and we'll roll that out across the estate on white space for streets. So that's some good news that I literally got an email 5 minutes before this meeting commenced on that. In terms of operations, route optimization, I said we will implement that in the middle of this year for Surrey, Heath and Woking, with your agreement obviously, and Surrey County Council on that. So that's good. The methodology that we have on KPI 3, 4 and 5, it's part of our project that we're looking at. We're looking at missed assists, we're looking at not rectified, and improving all them. I was pleased to see, not last week, the week before, Woking Depot actually had 0 missed assists, and only 1 last week. So it's a focus of the team at the moment on improving them lower down KPIs. KPI 1 has been very good since sort of mid-January for us. So, and our fleet team are looking at what improvements we can do in terms of electrifying some of our fleet, our smaller fleet, should I say, in terms of that, and looking at our carbon footprint in terms of our routes and work that we're doing. So a very positive figure. That's the end. I'll stop sharing and take questions from you if you have any, that is.
Yeah, good. Thanks very much, Ian, and thanks for all your work. I meant to say that from Joe's presentation on the contract performance, it was good to see that the 5 KPIs have improved significantly since it was fairly dire around about September, October last year. So great to see that they've all improved. So thank you very much for your work on that. And thank you for your mention about the garden waste in Elmbridge. It has been an issue. I've had quite a few emails from irate residents saying they've left their garden waste bins out and it hasn't been collected either, two days afterwards or 4 days afterwards, despite having reported it. So clearly the issue of sort of rather over capacity on some days for garden waste needs to be sorted out so it can be balanced out to cope with that increase of the number of subscribers. We are just finishing the new set of subscriptions coming in, and I think we're up to about 60% have already renewed. So, we can expect probably we'll be up to the same level for the coming year. So yeah, it will be an ongoing problem, and that sort of route optimization for garden waste would be very useful.
Sorry to just interrupt, Katrina. I'll just share my screen just briefly, just to show you a quick table that I've only put together this morning. So just it will show you the percentage increase, and this table that I'm showing you. Let me know when you can see it.
Yeah.
So this is just for Elmbridge. So you can see here the percentage increase. So the overall percentage is 40%. So what I've asked the guys to do is give me day to day what your increase is. And as you can see here, this Friday on week 1 is gone. That's our biggest increase. That's 53% increase from the start of the contract. But then now I need to double check this figure, but it's only 4%. So it's very interesting to look at that on a day-to-day basis, that on completion. And you'll see I've got another tab for Mole Valley there, and that surprises me, Joe, with what you said, Joe, that the garden waste in Mole Valley has increased percentage-wise, but if we look onto that tab, we've got a lot of minuses in terms of decrease of service and subscriptions. So overall, it's 13%, and the second week is all increases. But the first week, there's, as you can see, week 1 on a Wednesday is 30% decrease in subscriptions, or number of containers emptied on subscriptions. So yeah, it's a project I'm now going to get my teeth into, because this sort of I'd like to look at this and wonder why we're not performing. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing. We're trying to do the same for Surrey Heath and Woking as well, but the figures that I need are manipulated a bit differently there.
So there's obviously some scope for sort of trying to balance it out between the 2 weeks.
Yes, of course, and that's what we need to look at to make sure they are done Monday to Friday.
Yeah. Shall I come to Joe first for a comment, and then over to Rosemary?
Thank you. Yeah, just on the Elmbridge figures in particular, those Friday changes between 2018 and 2024, 25. We did actually do a rebalance of the Friday A and B. So the line of where the sort of garden waste boundary sits on a Friday was moved. And I think it would have been late 2018 or potentially 2019 that happened. I can't recall off the top of my head. So that, I think some of that change is actually driven by the fact that we made a deliberate move to try and rebalance the Fridays. And in Mole Valley in 2020, we had round changes, which saw quite a lot of day changes for a number of customers, and their garden waste will have shifted in line with that for a lot of people. We also saw a change to how the super narrow round works, and how that works spit out. So I think that will have had some impacts as well. So it's, you'd need to take those amends, if you like, to rounds into that to make sure it was sort of a clearer picture. But there's, the increase in Elmbridge customers is significant, and we know it has been growing elsewhere, but not quite to the same extent.
The data is very raw, Joe, at the moment. I've only just got it and started looking at it and manipulating it. So we'll take everything into consideration, and I may need to come to your guys for the knowledge on what you've done.
Okay, thank you. Rosemary.
Two things. First of all, Ian, I have to say it's really good to get those reports that all collections have taken place, which we are getting pretty regularly, or most of the time now, which is a big improvement. I wanted to ask about the street cleaning routes going on white space. Just for my benefit, if you can explain what benefits of that is, what will we be able to see that we couldn't see before?
So so in terms of the benefits it gives us, it enables us to talk to JWS and also to say, so are the frequencies right on the particular roads? Do they need to be increased? Can we decrease some so we can do more? But what it also gives us is not relying on the knowledge of the person actually doing the route. So if we need to change things, if people are off, if people go on holiday, the service doesn't suffer for that. You know, it's there, it's on the electronic device. So it, very much like the front line do when we do a normal waste collection and everything like that. It's the guys can follow the route electronically, and it's not in the head of the person that does the route. So they're the advantages it gives us. And we know where we're going on a daily basis. You guys know where we're going on a daily basis. So, you know, it will benefit the whole of the service. Just to say what we've actually done at Mole Valley, we're doing at Elmbridge now, in terms of looking at the service on streets, what we're sending out on a daily basis, and streets is being treated separately to the waste collection. So somebody is in control of the street services, and that is their job on a daily basis. The front line can't take from the streets to make their people up, because the person in charge of streets doesn't want to give his guys up or their guys up. So that will improve, because we will then have what we say we're going to have out on a daily basis, bar a few little hiccups when a vehicle's not available. It may break down on the morning. So, we're always going to have them little hills to climb on a daily basis. But, communication to you guys is the key there. We let you know that's happened. So, yeah. Hopefully that's
that's all really positive. Thank you very much, Ian. And I just wanted to ask about the garden waste subscription. I'm sorry, I didn't take in the period during which that percentage changed.
So that is from the start of the contract to date.
Okay, because my question it's probably not relevant to that data, because we've changed our subscription method, and I wondered if that was having any impact. And I don't know if Emma can say anything about that. It may not. It's probably not relevant to that, because it's a measure over a long period of time, and we've only done that quite recently. Thank you.
Okay. Morgan, let's come to you.
Thank you, Councillor Jane, and thank you, Ian. It's really good to see that level of detail. So thank you very much for that report. It's really good. My question is more of a seeking of a reassurance. It's just in advance of the summer periods, as we all know, kind of the strains that are placed on the street cleaning service becomes even more, especially in making sure litter bins are emptied as well. So I'm just kind of seeking your assurance that you've got that in mind, and what your plans potentially for is how you might be able to flex to respond to increased demand for kind of street cleaning bins to be emptied on a more regular frequency, and how you might anticipate those things. So it's not more of a I need you to answer I've got X amount. It's just more like how you might respond more generally to kind of the increased pressures of the summer periods, if that makes any sense at all.
No, Councillor Isaac, it makes perfect sense, and I don't think there's any magic wand I can wave to say that there is a reasoning behind what we do. My philosophy is, if for the period now we have out exactly what we say we're going to do, we keep on top of it. As soon as we know we see something flexing, we're able to flex. The difference now is, in terms of the depot being treated as a whole, yes, it is treated as a whole because we want every service to be done. But by separating out the waste collection side and the street side, we're tasking them team members with, that's your team. You tell me what you need. You've got your core team. You've got your, let's be quite crude, your fat in that number. That's what you are there to use. If you choose to, during your summer period, not allow as many people to go on holiday, and you're on top of your sickness and that, we have the ability to send maybe an extra person out, an extra 2 people out a couple of days a week. So that's for them to manage. I'm not going to micromanage them. If they have a problem, they can come to me. But I think the way we're managing the team now is we're giving them the flexibility and the ownership to perform for you guys and the public. So yeah, if we need to bring staff in, you know, you may have an event on and you let us know in advance. You know, we can say, okay, we know we need to be on top of it. We need to bring people in. We can do that. It's not a problem at all. So, you know, hopefully it works.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks.
Okay, Joe, did you want to come in there?
Thank you. Yes, just to add, really, I know in the slides, Ian had information about white space improvements, and I think one of the projects that's on that list that we would hope to see kind of development of going forward is around how the litter bins are recorded in white space, and how that information is used, because as you know, we're just completing a programme where we've done some litter bin replacements and some updates, and one of the things we've been talking to Amy about with the use of white space was to not just have the street sweeping schedules in there, but the litter bin routes as well, and the ability to give each litter bin an individual sort of identifier, one so that can help the customer report it, so that the crew's sent to the correct bin. Excuse my voice going this morning. If they do report that a bin's overflowing, but also so that if the crew have a list of bins on white space and in the in-cab that they're doing today, not only can they tick them all off as done, but it potentially give them the ability to report things like how full the bin was when they emptied it, so that Amy then are collecting data and intelligence to help them decide whether they need to shift some of those frequencies. You know, if the bin's very full when they get there every time, then maybe they need to go more often. If it's not very full at all, they can look at maybe reducing the frequency. So it's not in place at the moment, but hearing Ian talk about things like the schedule start to getting loaded in means hopefully we're sort of headed in that direction, that we can start to do those types of pieces of work as well, which obviously would sort of give a lot more data to help support how they need, you know, how things need to be resourced at different times of the year. So yeah, hopefully we can push that one back up the list again.
Yeah, no, that sounds really useful. Yeah, Morgan.
Thank you. It's just thank you, Joe. That's good intel as well. It was just on something that Ian was saying there about kind of with his teams, which is, I fully agree, and I think it's a really good thing that you're doing, and so I'm fully supportive. Is there sufficient kind of training and so that those team leaders are understand that they're empowered to make those decisions? Because it's one thing kind of in setting it up so they can make the decisions. It's just then making sure that they know they are able to make those decisions, and that's a I don't want that's a way to avoid you having to micromanage. So I'm kind of it's just making sure that yes, we can kind of make sure that those teams are fully aware of how they can flex. And I just kind of would like to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way I've always managed, Councillor Rise. You know, I give people the ability. Moving through my career, I learned from my mistakes, and that's what I say to them. You will learn from your mistakes. Live by the decision you make. You know, everyone makes a decision for a reason, and you know, I'm not asking you to justify that reason to me, but you know, if you make a mistake, let's talk about why. What could you have done differently? People will learn. I don't think there's any course I can send people on to to be empowered. I think I just need to give them the ability to be confident in their decision making. Yeah, that's what I would say to you. That's, you know, I encourage them to do that, and I think you'll probably notice it more now, because I think we've gone through a period where mistakes were made, and now I can see from what I'm seeing February, March, and hopefully into April, the figures are vast improvements. So you know, hopefully the next meeting I can show you guys that improvement that we've made.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good. Thanks very much, Ian. I was certainly heartened to hear that you're tackling street cleaning with by having dedicated service teams. I think it's fair to say that the street cleaning service over the last few months has been an area of concern. I think probably across all three boroughs and districts. So yeah, thanks for tackling that by having dedicated manager and a team to do that. So let's hope we see an improvement on that. I was just interested in your comment about doing some sort of fleet electrification of smaller vehicles. Which sort of vehicles would that be then? Is that sort of going to be caged vehicle replacements, that sort of thing?
So in terms of what we're looking at now, we're looking at each one of our team leaders, workshop managers, depot managers, they have vans. So we're looking at the smaller vans in terms of that. There's 2 actually coming in this week that we've changed out for that. I have asked for a trial to be carried out on a larger vehicle, so potentially a caged vehicle. I'll be honest with you, I don't think there's anything larger than that would be sufficient for what we want at the moment, currently. I think we're quite rural to be able to bring a 26-ton electrified vehicle in at the moment. I don't think it would be justifiable at the moment. So it's more the smaller fleet. If we can change all of our smaller vans, then I think we'll be up to about potentially in the 20% of the fleet.
Right. And then presumably you need to put in electric vehicle charging points then in the depots.
Not necessarily.
No.
We can use it on a charge card. I think the infrastructure around the depots is good enough currently. I have an electric vehicle for work, and I use the infrastructure locally in Surrey.
Right. Okay. Good. Yeah, that's good to hear. Emma.
It would be really interesting as part of your next quarterly update, Ian, if you could do a bit more around carbon footprint reduction and sustainability, because last week there's been a lot around recovery, which is really important. But I'm sure we've all declared climate emergencies across all of our districts and boroughs, and for me, it's a real priority as well. So it'd be really good to understand a bit more about what the opportunities are there. We have Bucher, it literally is just around the corner from your Dorking depot. We have a really strong relationship with them as an example. So if we can explore leveraging some of those relationships, that would be a great opportunity. And that would be more on the street sweeping side, obviously. But yeah, anything we can do to demonstrate we're thinking ahead would be brilliant.
Yeah, we've got a couple of other projects. One that I kicked off yesterday. I'll just give you a brief bit to do with PPE. There is a lot of sustainability we can do with our PPE. A lot. I think the figures I saw yesterday, please don't quote me on this, and I know we're recording this, but if we can do it across the project over a 3-year period, I know we've only got a couple of years left on the project, I think we could reduce our PPE carbon footprint by 73%. So that's a win for me. So if I can do that, then we'll see. But we're going to trial it first. So
yeah. Good. Yeah. Thanks ever so much. We stay with you then, Ian, for the AMI Service Recovery Plan, item 6.
So in terms of the recovery plan, I've got nothing to present, but I can just tell you what stuff we're doing. A lot of what we've just spoken about in terms of Mole Valley, we did that. That is working for us now. So myself, I'm stepping away a little bit from Mole Valley now and concentrating more on Elmbridge in terms of getting their service up to date, like we've just discussed. So in terms of what we did on the streets with Mole Valley, we've put extra resource in. So the street side were 2 people short. We've put them 2 people in. We've identified that that Elmbridge are in the same position. They were 2 heads short in their total head count, especially on their street side. So that we're bringing them people in to do that, and I'm hoping they're in position by April next week. And that will improve, and we can have a full fleet of sweepers out in Elmbridge as well as across the other depots. Recovery plan sort of looks at everything. It's a moving beast. We look at it every day in terms of what can we improve, so that the route optimization and all that. So what I have noticed the guys are doing now, though, they're working a couple of weeks ahead of themselves in terms of their fleet, so we know when we could possibly have a pinch point on fleet going off the road for servicing, MOTs. So it's an improving picture. There's a few. I think there's a few risks that we have at the moment in terms of being able to service you guys fully. One, I know Kelly's had discussions with the team about some pieces of equipment we need to get fitted, which comes into legislation next week. So we're moving on that at pace, and getting these bits of equipment in so we can still service our vehicles and keep them on the road for you. So yeah, there's bits and pieces there. So that's the recovery plan. We'll keep on top of it. So
right. Okay, good. Any comments or questions on that? No, I think, as you said, sort of most of it you covered in your first piece on the sort of improvement plan. Okay, lovely. Item 7 then is the JWS Programme Progress Report, which I think is over to you again, Jo.
That is, I'm hoping my voice will hold out. It's had a few minutes rest. Yes, so in the paper what we have is a sort of cover report that gives you some highlights and some updates, and then the full list of activities and their sort of current status and progress is appended to that. So I wasn't planning to go into lots and lots of detail, but really just flag some of those highlights. The next item Nick will be following on with, how that will track into next year's programme of work as well. So in terms of projects for this year that we are looking to have completed by the end of the year, so by next week, are the litter bin rollout. So we've had a programme of replacements in Surrey Heath, Elmbridge and Mole Valley to install new litter bins and improve those. And at the same time, we've obviously assessed where those locations are and whether we can adjust any of those. We've had the work ongoing that was funded by Material Focus to improve small weed collections, and the additional elements of that we were able to repurpose some funding for in their final stages too. The Own Your Impact campaign that's been going on continues to be amplified by the comms team in the joint contract areas, and the recycling improvements team have been progressing the rollout for trial food waste housing units for use in communal properties. In terms of sort of policy change, the focus really has been on reviewing and responding to the EPR payment letters that the authorities have received in recent times. And the commercial and commissioning team have been working on the future service plans and taking the next steps into moving forward with the procurement after the completion of the strategic options appraisal. We have a lot of other items on the programme, many of which are business as usual activities which have continued, but some of those areas of work and some of the projects we've been undertaking have been impacted by some of the service issues that we've been dealing with as well. We also know that we support Amy on their improvement plan, and as Ian's talked about, some of those things haven't progressed. They've had a lot of changes in their management team, so we've needed to kind of re-establish those working relationships with Ian and his colleagues that have come into different roles, so that we can pick up on those projects and make sure we can prioritise those ones which are taken forward. So yes, I wasn't expecting really to go into talk too much more than that, because I know there's a lot of information in there and you don't need me to sort of read it all out to you, but those are the highlights and the sort of key areas, and happy to provide any updates or elaborate on anything that you need more details on that's within the report.
Okay, thank you, Jo. Just a couple of questions from me. Well, one of the items there is the Rethink Waste scheme. Now, I know that's an SCP funded scheme, but we started off the trial in Elmbridge and it's been rolled out since. Still only nearly 7,000 households, which is not a vast percentage of all those across the county. And I know that we sort of reviewed it last year and we decided to take it forward on a slightly lower cost basis. Do you think we should review that again? Is it worth continuing for another year?
I'm hoping one of my colleagues who's better informed on Rethink
I was going to ask Nick to come in here.
Thank you.
No problem. Absolutely. So I think with Rethink Waste, I think it's fair to say that we've probably almost reached a point of saturation where those that are willing to listen and sign up have signed up. So I think it does need to be sort of reviewed and re-looked at, and to sort of have an appreciation of what else it could look at sort of moving forward. Notwithstanding your comment where you were saying, well, obviously we're about to lose the SEP administration, so that's moving back to the county council. So I understand they are keen on moving forward with Rethink Waste, but perhaps reshaping it slightly to focus on some other areas and bring more into it and see what they can do to boost the numbers beyond what we've got to currently. So yeah, I think there's roughly about 13,000 households that are signed up county-wide, 7,000 of which are in the joint contract area. So we obviously take up a large proportion of that. So I think the key with that is we don't want to lose all of those households that have signed up because the scheme is due to come to an end at the end of June. So as I said, SCC are keen on moving forward, and they will be sort of engaging us as sort of consultees to sort of help shape that scheme over the next 3 months when it comes to an end, and then a new scheme kicks off from early summer.
Okay, but it's essentially an SEP funded scheme, so
it is
an SEP decision to take forward or not.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, my second question was on the paragraph on the letters that you issued to residents of Surrey Heath on contamination, and there's a comment there that before and after, you've compared contamination rates before and after the letters were sent, and there was a marked drop in the amount of contamination. Are you thinking of rolling that out to the other 3 local authorities?
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
So essentially this is a SEP funded project again. So with JWS, when being responsible during 24-25, we did this as a trial to see if we felt it would have an impact. And from the trial that we did, we feel that it did have an impact, and we fed all of that information to Surrey County Council. So obviously they're going to be developing and designing the work programme for 25-26. So it'll be, like Nick said, through that consultation process, that if we feel that that's beneficial, we can perhaps request that some of that activity take place within our respective areas. So that we can try and reduce contamination in the areas where we're seeing high levels of it. But like I say, it'd be determined by Surrey County Council in consultation with the districts and boroughs as part of the SEP work programme.
Right. Okay. Yeah, good. Thanks very much. Any other questions on that? Okay, we are asked to, there's a recommendation on that, which is recommended that members note this progress update and the key outputs, outcomes and achievements delivered during the period. So I guess we're all happy to note that recommendation. Okay, thank you. Then the next item is the programme 25-26 proposal, which I think is Nick.
Yes, good morning. Yes, that'll be me taking you through this item. I've got some slides to share with you this morning because I appreciate that paper in the agenda pack is reasonably long, so I'll try and condense this in a presentation for you. Bear with me whilst I share my screen. Let me get this into presenter mode. Okay, hopefully you can see that all right, Councillor Tilling, if you could confirm.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, thanks very much. So, so obviously, as I just said, the agenda pack includes a report and appendix on the 25-26 work programme, but I've just got some sort of very high level slides for you here summarising the key points from that, essentially outlining the proposed sort of business operations and improvement work we'll do to sort of manage the joint contract in 25-26. So our starting point for developing the work programme for this year was to review where the current work programme is now and start to reflect how that's gone so far. And with this in mind, what could be included for next year, which also sort of considered what could change over the sort of next year. So in summary, and Joe's kind of covered this to a degree already, we felt that we delivered the sort of day-to-day business operations work well, despite some sort of difficult circumstances with the service, and that we'd managed to deliver a reasonable number of projects, including some good examples of successful work, like the chewing gum cleaning, textile and weed contract renewals, and the litter bin improvements that we're still doing now, to sort of name a few. However, as sort of Joe said earlier, there were some projects that we haven't been able to sort of progress as we hoped, owing mainly to sort of resource constraints and prioritising service delivery. We've also considered what's changing in our current environment, such as the upcoming SEP transfer to Surrey County Council, emerging policy changes that are coming through, the re-procurement of a new joint contract, and of course the need to always look for efficiencies in what we do. So this has all been sort of factored into our thinking for the next year and what initiatives should be included based on a new structure for JWS being in place. So the partnering board received an earlier version of this presentation at their briefing meeting a few weeks ago on the draft work programme, and they endorsed the sort of revised objectives and the activities that we've set out. So these are the suggested objectives for the year ahead. Not a lot has changed here compared to last year, with the suggested changes highlighted in yellow. So we've consolidated two previous communications objectives into one, so objective 3, and that sort of recognises the sort of reduced level of communications resource we'll have moving forward owing to the SEP transfer. So there will need to be, of course, a balance struck on what level of proactive engagement can be done moving forward. And objective 7 has been strengthened to include the work we need to do now and in the long term to not only ensure we're sort of compliant with emerging policy that's coming through, but to also ensure we're in a position to launch a new joint contract in the future. So just over the next few slides, I'll set out the activities we're suggesting be delivered to support the delivery of each objective. Any new work for 25-26 is highlighted in yellow on each slide. So objective 1, we have the sort of usual business operation type activities to manage the contract, performance data, customer inquiries and complaints. We're looking to produce a gateway review report to highlight what's been delivered so far with a complaints process review and suggested further work that we sort of might need to be explored by the team, both in the short term and the long term. We, of course, as Joe was saying earlier, continue to sort of support Amy in their improvement plan where required to ensure that that's delivered, and we'll continue to establish IT and data management improvements where we can. And in addition to this, we're looking to develop further a recently created performance dashboard, enabling trends to better be identified and help make more informed decisions on where improvements can be targeted moving forward. So that was objective 1. On to objective 2. We'll continue to review collection services at existing developments to see where improvements can be made, and will help to set up collection services at new developments. The Bring Bank Review project is close to completion, and we'll look to implement the recommendations from this to sort of seek savings, increase the capture of textiles and income received. Following the delivery of the litter bin improvements in the existing work programme, we'll conduct a review of bins to determine composition and document what's happening post-collection to see what else might need to be targeted there. Further to the work that we've been delivering to reduce contamination in the trial area of Woking in the existing programme, we'll continue to monitor the effectiveness of that and recommend what actions could be rolled out to other areas of the joint contract and begin to implement these. And we're submitting another bid to Keep Britain Tidy, their fund for 2025 to deliver further chewing gum cleaning in the joint contract area. And lastly, we'll work with the Surrey Environment Partnership to ensure food recycling services are rolled out to remaining properties where possible by the 31st of March 2026 deadline. On to objective 3, we'll continue to deliver communication support to the running of the service and update residents about any changes with their service. As part of this, we'll continue to use digital channels to communicate with residents, and we'll respond to inquiries as they arise from the media. Where resource permits, we'll continue to engage residents at community events as we've done in the past year, and we'll continue to monitor and analyse garden waste subscriptions and organise extra promotion where there is a need. On objective 4, we'll continue to do our usual business operations tasks in regard to health and safety, so the contract continues to operate safely, and we'll keep business continuity under review to ensure we are sort of equipped to respond to unplanned events. Objective 5 will continue to manage joint contract governance by organising board and committee meetings and providing briefings where required. We'll also continue to oversee the work programme by tracking progress and reporting quarterly to you, as we've done today. As an addition, this year we'll maintain a risk register specifically for the joint contract and review this with partners every quarter, so risk responses can be refined as required. And we'll also handle the sort of necessary financial processes like invoicing, budget reviews and reporting. Tasks such as building relationships with authorities and industry groups will continue to be key for us, including with the Surrey Environment Partnership to ensure the joint contract area gets maximum value from that. Under objective 6, we'll continue to focus on identifying savings and income opportunities for review and approval. We'll of course continue to actively look for funding opportunities to benefit the joint contract. So the Keep Britain Tidy Chewing Gum Fund is an example of that. It will be necessary for us to review ways of working to boost the efficiency and build resilience after the reorganisation with SEP transferring to SEC, so that will be taken forward once things have settled down. And then lastly, with objective 7, we'd like to develop a joint contract strategy which captures the work we need to do in the short and longer term to deliver improvements to reach performance targets and meet statutory requirements. Linked to this, we have the ongoing work associated with the procurement of a new joint contract and developing a new inter-authority agreement with partners. And we'll develop recommendations on what the collection methodology could be for the new joint contract once a new contractor is embedded. We'll produce and submit responses on behalf of the joint contract authorities to consultations on proposed national policy linked to recycling and waste. And we'll continue to engage DEFRA on the collection and packaging reforms, keeping partners informed and carrying out necessary actions to assist. And lastly, we'll ensure we comply with the new legislation coming through. In the main, this means we'll complete a assessment for simpler recycling to ensure dry recycling can continue to be collected, commingled from the 31st of March 2026. And we'll work to plan, communicate and introduce required additional materials to dry mix recycling collections by the 31st of March 2026 where possible. So we're looking at things like aerosols and cartons by next March, and then films and flexibles the year after. So the recommendation to the committee this morning is to provide any feedback on the revised objectives and the work programme for 25-26 and ultimately approve the objectives and activities with any requested changes. So that's it from me. I'll now hand back to Councillor Tilling for any questions and the recommendations approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Nick. That's a useful summary of what were lots of different slides on each of those objectives. So thanks for breaking that down for us. Objective 3 is the communications objective.
Yes.
So we obviously had the business over this year of not providing the usual collection schedule cards. So I guess we need to review whether that's the best way of going forward, is just by pointing people to the website to tell them when their various bits of waste are going to be collected.
Yes.
From my point of view, I actually didn't get very many complaints about that at all.
Okay.
I thought I might get lots. There were one or two councillor colleagues who seemed to be pretty upset about it.
Yeah.
But apart from them, I think I didn't get very much from residents at all.
Yeah.
I think it was handled in slightly different ways across each of the 4 local authorities. I think Morgan, did I read that you actually did send out some schedule cards in the end in Surrey Heath, or maybe not?
I don't believe we did.
No, okay, right. Now I thought one of the councils just sort of separately funded.
I think Guildford sent theirs out, but that's out. Not all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Spelthorne Borough Council is an example where they do something on top of the set funded service guides are produced. Yeah.
Okay, I know it was because of sort of SEP wanting us to save money that we reduced that service, but I guess as JWS, if we wanted to bring it back, we might better do that sort of separately outside the SEP organisation. But yeah, as I say, I think from my point of view, I didn't get very many complaints at all. So I think that moving to an electronic based system seems to be a sensible way forward, because it's more sustainable. We save a lot of printed card and paper that would otherwise, it's probably going to be disposed of by majority of people. But okay, Rosemary, I'll bring you in.
I'm not aware that we had any significant problem having removed it, but my understanding is once the changes start to come in the next couple of years, at some point we'll need to send something out. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the part of the rationale for not doing the service guides, as you said, well, part of it was obviously to make a financial saving, but equally it was, well, look, nothing has really sort of changed over the last few years in terms of what additional materials can be collected at the curbside for recycling. So as I've sort of said in my presentation now, legislation has come in which is going to require us to collect these additional materials in the next few years, and that would be a really good point to bring something like this back in place, to say, right, okay, well, this is the service, and now there's additional materials that you can put into your mixed recycling bin. So I think that was part of the rationale. You're very right, Councillor Hobbs, to sort of hold off, and then when there's something to tell residents, we go back and say, right, this is what's now available in terms of the service coming to you.
Thank you. Can I just mention the elephant in the room, local government reorganisation?
Yes.
And I don't think I've picked anything up specifically on that, but being open to approaches or discussions with other groups, is that something that should be in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's wider than perhaps just the joint contract, as you say, because obviously the LGR is obviously focusing on the entire county. So this was actually raised at the officers group for the Surrey Environment Partnership yesterday, about thinking about, well, whilst this discussion is going on, it's obviously a very sort of high level in terms of how the sort of county may split up. We might want to be sort of part of that process to suggest, well, how waste might work moving forward, because, for example, it might not make sense to have 3 or 4 waste disposal authorities as an example. So I think that was the first time it was discussed sort of yesterday as an opener to say, well, let's get a group of us together as a subgroup to start to talk about that and start to look at sort of options for how waste might be handled moving forward, as a sort of a longer term option with LGR in mind. So I think that's a set thing that, yeah, we will be absolutely involved in terms of the engagement and development of moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Morgan?
Thanks. It's normally me that brings up LGR, so thanks, Rosemary. You saved me a job there. Just with the kind of the service guides, we like I did get some complaints. I don't think we had significant levels of complaints to warrant kind of a kind of complete change. What I did get complaints about was the kind of the slow rollout of kind of it being available online, and that may have just been a Surrey Heath, because Surrey Heath has different collection areas, so there was a hiccup in, not a hiccup, that's the wrong thing to use. There was a delay in being able to get the service guides online in the right areas I think we probably now address that issue moving forward, so we wouldn't run into it again. But a lot of people were people who kind of made complaints to me or to colleagues. They were saying they would normally, while they may not have kept the service guide, but they may have glanced at it to reassure themselves about kind of collection days, etc., etc., etc. And I think that is perfectly serviceable by a online version. It's just me, but they were then looking at it at kind of the Christmas time to make sure that they were fully prepared, and it wasn't available until into the new year. So I think if there aren't any changes, as Rosemary says, there's almost no need to send out a printed version of the same thing every year. So it's just making sure that in the future that we are anticipating any kind of needs for an electronic version to go online on our council websites, just to make sure that we can get it out in the right time, rather than, oh, sorry, it's not ready yet, it'll come in a few weeks kind of the answer. Because that's what frustrated a lot of residents in Surrey Heath, was a delay when they could have just when they wanted it sooner, essentially. But thanks.
Yeah. Joe, you have a response to that?
Yes, I was just going to sort of acknowledge that, you know, we definitely did have some delays and some teething problems with getting the collection calendars available everywhere in time, and not just people being able to look up their collection day online, which in a lot of places was possible already. It was getting to that point where they could then download, and if they wanted to, sort of print off a PDF. So I think, yeah, we've cracked that one, and we'll be better at it next time when the new versions go up for 2026. Definitely. We are we'll be looking at it a lot earlier on, because that decision was sort of pending for quite a while through the summer last year, which sort of had us toying with how early to start on those things. But yeah, I think we'll be smoother on that next year. Definitely, there's been a lot of learning, but also on some smaller issues, you know, like if more people are likely to print it off, how can we make that more sort of home printer friendly in its formatting and design? Lots of little things like that we can take on as learnings from last time around. And just looking at some, you know, referring to some emails that have been bouncing around with us recently about sort of reminding people about no changes over bank holidays and Easter on collections. We'll continue promoting that ability to look up your collection days online and get those calendars at these points in the year as well, just to kind of raise awareness of it further. So yeah, I think we'll do a better job of the digital versions second time around. But yeah, happy that we've resolved a lot of the issues that crept in initially. Yeah,
good. Thanks, Joe. Just one final point from me then, Nick, is you mentioned getting ready for simpler recycling from 31st of March next year, which doesn't give us long. So, I mean, let's take, for example, the ubiquitous food and drinks cartons, which I've regularly been on about at SEP meetings. And in Elmbridge a few years ago, I managed to introduce a couple of carton bring banks with ACE UK, so we could actually have places where people could deposit their empty cartons. Whilst it's an aim of JWS to get ready for simpler recycling, the problem is that whilst we could collect them, the MRFs need to be ready to separate them out and do something with them. And whenever we have SEP meetings, I normally ask that question: is what are they doing to get ready to have the recycling facilities at the MRFs? So how are you sort of? We can't in isolation
absolutely
collect food and drinks cartons from next March unless Surrey are ready to dispose of them. So how do we take that forward?
Completely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, fundamentally, there is a disconnect between government policies and sector capabilities, making it sort of challenging to sort of manage certain materials at the curbside effectively. So, for example, MRFs prefer materials like cartons and films and flexibles later on to be sort of collected separately as monostreams, because when they mix with other materials, they can obviously cause contamination and they're difficult to process at these sort of facilities. Additionally, if there's sort of like a limited market demand for these materials, MRFs may not have the space to store them, and they may dispose of them to sort of prioritise more valuable materials that are coming through with better established markets. So there's going to have to be a lot of engagement with, as you say, different sort of stakeholders in the process, with us, with County Council, with the MRFs, to sort of get them ready in terms of, well, what's the sort of best way to sort of collect these materials in the most effective way moving forward. So yes, I think it's something we need to sort of focus on quite quickly now with the deadline in mind, because obviously we're only a year away from that one, and then 2 years from which I think is going to be the more challenging one, because the films and flexibles are found in larger quantities than the rest. So that's where we're talking about, potentially having to add additional resources into the contract. So that could be challenging. The other two is, yes, we could pick them up at the curbside, but as you say, we've got to ensure that because the last thing we want to do in terms of the message that we're conveying to residents is, right, we can now pick up these materials, we got to make sure that they can be sort of recycled. So there's a lot of work to do there. So I don't necessarily have all of the answers for you right now, but it's certainly one that we really need to engage on.
Absolutely. Good. Thanks for that, Nick. Right, any other questions or comments? No, I can't see any more hands up. Good. So thank you for that, Nick. That sort of completes, I think, doesn't it, the first part of the meeting. We then have a separate session. So I think we now say goodbye to Ian and thank you for your input and your good work you're doing, Ian.
You're welcome. Thanks all. See you next time. Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
And we go on to the exempt part of the agenda. So Q3 finance update report.